on that, the voter, that way it gives us a little wiggle room, and if we don't need that 25 basis points and the market's still there, great, that's a bonus. But I hate to tell them, hey, this would be the levy. By the time we get to voting, if you go in a November election and it passes, you know, ideally you probably want to get in the market as soon as you can. But December's typically, you know how December works. I mean, with holidays and so forth, and then you get back the first of the year. By the time you get your bond issue done, say even you could get it done in January, it wouldn't close till February. So you've still got a 3-month gap there. And if interest rates would happen to spike then, I'd hate to advertise, you know, a 4.5% interest rate when all of a sudden it's 4.75. So I mean, that's just food for thought, and that's something that we'll need to discuss and do what you folks think is most appropriate. But I think you know, that's a lot of times that's what we do, is we'll show them kind of a, I want to say worst case scenario, but obviously that's not the worst case scenario either, because nobody knows what the worst, interest rates could go to 10, you know. So that's one of the topics I guess I wanted to touch on. The other one is just the timing of everything. We'll need to have a little capitalized interest on this issue from a November election, just because the timing wise you won't put your levy on until the following year. Follow me? So whatever monies are issued, and it may be a situation where you want to put, maybe don't issue all the bonds at one time. Maybe issue what you need as the project's being, and we do it in pieces so that interest meter's not running on some of that money. So that's another thing that we will strategize and work on as we go down this path. But that's
I think that's what the hospital did, wasn't it? They kind of delayed,
yeah,
some of the selling the bonds.
Yeah, we started off with the first issue at 5.08, and we ended up with the fifth issue at 4.8.
Yeah, there was actually, was it 4 different pieces, if I'm right, or was it 5?
We would have probably issued it all at once, except the 4 of the major 5 insurers got caught in economics, so that's why we decided to go with Nebraska area investors.
Yeah,
it became be delayed over quite a period of time here. Even our construction needs are going to be delayed, and so we'll want to watch the interest rate.
Sure.
So it doesn't go up on us, but at the same time, we don't. If the interest rate is fairly stable, we don't want to borrow it
till you need it.
Until we really need it.
And those are things too that we coordinate with the architect and with Mark Lewis at BD. Is once we get a draw schedule of the project of when monies are needed, and obviously that's going to change a little bit too. Nothing's etched in stone there, but we can match up, you know, the issuance of these bonds with that. That'll be most advantageous for you. And
that's good news, because we've been kind of saying 20 cents. So
yeah, I mean, with these, I mean, in today's market, you would be, you know, south of 20 cents, which is I think it's fairly encouraging. The other thing I might point out too is we're using those numbers, the difference that you may consider here, the difference in interest, I mean, between the two, between the 20-year and 25-year issue, is about $2.2 million. So by carrying that money for an extra 5 years, it's an additional $2.2 million in interest expense. So, you know, and on the levy, you know, it's a penny and a half higher to do a 20-year financing, or so. Something to consider there too, as well. I know everybody wants to get that levy as low as possible, and understandably, but you know, if you can stomach that extra penny and a half roughly, you can save quite a bit of money in interest expense there.
You didn't happen to run what the 4.75 would do to our levy on a 20-year, did you? You mentioned that, have that room to put that extra.
No, but I can probably real quick. Well, I can, when we get done here, I'll
Sure.
let you guys carry on and I'll come back to it, but yeah, I can run that.
And now, as far as the additional cost, like you said, we won't be able to levy until the following year, so how much does that end up?
Capitalized interest?
Right.
Capitalized interest on that 25-year scenario was $330,000 roughly. And on the 20-year issue was just under $300,000.
And that,
So
that
that's-
would be assuming if you did it all up front.
Correct. That's if you said, and I was using a dated date, meaning the date we'd close and you'd receive money of March 15th. So I was assuming you'd issue them in February, close in March, you get your money, and that interest meter starts. I've set it up on a June 15 and December 15 payment schedule. And the reason for that is you get your tax collections usually in April, May for the first half, which you pay your June, which is a smaller one, just your interest payment. And then we put your principal and interest in December, which would be when all your collections should be in, and that would be the larger payment. And that's typically how we do this. We could certainly structure it a different way if you'd like, but that usually works best with schools and their tax collections.
Could we Build America funds?
Build America bonds?
Bonds. We get 35% rebate, right?
Yeah, there hasn't been any of them issued yet in the state, I don't think.
Did you see the article on what Omaha's doing? Are you aware? I mean, they sound like they're ready to go on it. And
Yeah.
I wonder how they know that if they.
Well,
because it doesn't sound like the department had it finalized yet.
well, now is that you're talking about the QZABs? There's, the Build America bonds are similar to your qualified capital purpose bonds, which is that limited tax. You can use for heating and air, you can use for, fire, heating, air, fire, ADA accessibility, those types of deals. And it's a 5.2 cent levy limitation for 10 years is your max.
Free, or interest-free qualified school construction bonds.
Yeah,
They were gonna
QZABs
go
they call them.
35 million on that.
Yeah, and what's happening on those, see, and this is, I'm not sure how they're gonna get it all done, but, because the Department of Ed has to allocate those. I mean, there's certain amount of money that they've allowed for the state, and the Department of Ed has said, okay, we are gonna, you all put in your request for what you want for money, and then they'll allocate it pro rata on what requests they have. And that's, they said they'd make their allocation, they'd let it out by October, I think. They'd let the allocations out in November, and those bonds have to be issued before the end of the year. That gives you 30 days to issue bonds. And that, I'm not so sure you can find buyers of those bonds right now in that quick a time. I mean, the market's untested. I mean, I'm sure they're out there somewhere, but it hasn't, and they're trying to ram it in a 60-day period. I think there needs to be a little more thought process and a little better strategy personally on how they're going to implement this. But you can certainly put in for, put in for an allocation on these. I just don't know what. I got a sneaking suspicion that Lincoln and Omaha are going to put in for a big batch of it, and they'll probably be awarded a big batch of it.
Yeah, off the door work.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
But then the Build America bonds
now those are
are
issued,
more guaranteed, or, I mean.
well, they're issued under the same authority as your, what you have now, your qualified capital purpose funds, that's 79,110. or
5.2 cent.
The 5.2 cent, but they'll actually let you go out 20 years. The Build America bonds are also taxable bonds. So they're gonna carry a higher interest rate, but you get rebated that 35%. So in effect, your net effect of borrowing costs will be similar to tax-free bonds. It might be a little better in some cases, and it might be a little worse in some cases. It's just, again, it's an animal that we haven't really let loose yet. Nobody, I mean, I think Conestoga Schools is supposed to be doing some, we call them BABs, Build America bonds. I think that they're gonna do an issue